Derek Malone, a 30-year-old prankster from Miami, Florida, stepped onto the cobblestone path of Buckingham Palace with a mission: to crack the unshakable facade of a royal guard for his next viral video. Known online as D-Man Pranks, with a following of over 2.7 million subscribers, Derek had built his brand on pushing boundaries in foreign lands, mimicking mimes in Paris, racing a Vespa through Rome's Colosseum, and now he'd set his sights on what he called the world's stiffest soldiers. On that typical Tuesday morning, with the sun casting a golden glow over the palace's iron gates, Derek approached his target, a GoPro strapped to his chest and his buddy Corey filming discreetly from the crowd. His plan was simple yet bold: provoke the guard with a series of childish stunts, capture the gasps, and strut away grinning for the camera. It started with a loud blast from an air horn just inches from the guard's ear, a jolt that would have made most flinch. But the guard didn't budge. Laughing, Derek upped the ante, pulling a fake mustache from his pocket and reaching to stick it on the guard's face, his fingers brushing dangerously close. The crowd's murmurs grew as he mimicked the guard's posture, squeezed a squeaky rubber chicken, and even knelt to shine the soldier's boot with a crumpled tissue. Undeterred by the lack of reaction, he waved a tiny British flag right under the guard's hat, crossing from mere annoyance into physical interference. To Derek, it was all content, another stunt to shock his audience. But what began as a playful prank was about to unravel into something far more serious, testing the limits of both his bravado and the guard's legendary discipline. Amid the bustling crowd at Buckingham Palace, where tourists snapped photos and children peered through the ornate iron gates, stood Corporal Elijah Ward, a figure of unyielding resolve in his red tunic and bearskin hat. A decade-plus veteran of the British Army, Elijah hailed from a working-class neighborhood in Birmingham, England, the youngest of 5 siblings, shaped by a family tragedy, his older brother's death in uniform overseas, that etched a deep sense of duty into his soul. With 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Cyprus under his belt, he'd earned his place among the Queen's Guard, a role that demanded not just physical precision, but an almost superhuman composure. That Tuesday morning, as Derek Malone launched his barrage of pranks, Elijah embodied this ideal. Chin up, shoulders squared, his rifle balanced perfectly in his grip, his eyes fixed forward like a statue carved from stone. The air horn blasted inches from his ear, enough to rattle anyone. Yet he didn't flinch. Derek's rubber chicken squeaked, his fake mustache dangled close, and still, Elijah remained a wall of calm, unfazed by the growing giggles and gasps from the crowd. It wasn't until Derek's fingers brushed near his face, attempting to stick that cartoonish prop, that Elijah moved, a sharp ceremonial stomp of his rifle butt against the cobblestones, a sound like a thunderclap that cut through the chaos. "Stand back, sir," he said, his voice low but piercing, carrying the weight of centuries of tradition in just 3 words. No shouting, no anger, just authority, pure and simple. When Derek persisted, waving a tiny flag under his hat, Elijah stepped forward, not to strike but to block, a controlled motion that sent the prankster stumbling. This wasn't a performance, it was principle. Elijah wasn't just a guard in a fancy uniform playing a part. He was a soldier with real scars, real memories, and a real mission to uphold the honor of his post. His silence wasn't weakness, it was strength, a testament to the discipline that defined him, proving that true power doesn't need to shout. It stands firm, unshaken, even as the world around it erupts in noise. What began as a lighthearted prank at Buckingham Palace spiraled into a stark lesson in consequences for Derek Malone, the brash American influencer from Miami. His antics, blasting an air horn, waving a rubber chicken, and sticking a fake mustache near the guard's face, were meant to be harmless fun, fodder for his 2.7 million followers. But when he pulled out a tiny British flag and fluttered it just inches from Corporal Elijah Ward's hat, brushing the edge of the soldier's uniform, he crossed a line that turned his stunt into something far graver. Under British law, physically interfering with a royal guard on duty isn't just disruptive, it's a serious offense, a violation of the ceremonial space that Elijah was sworn to protect. The guard's response was swift but measured, a single step forward, a subtle pivot, and a controlled push with his boot. Not an attack, but enough to send Derek stumbling onto the cobblestone path, his bravado unraveling in front of a stunned crowd. Gasps replaced laughter as tourists lowered their phones, and Derek's friend Corey rushed over, half joking, "Yo, D, you good?" But the moment was no longer his to spin. Behind the scenes, two palace security officers, clad in dark uniforms, closed in. Not running, but with a steady purpose that signaled the shift from viral spectacle to real-world reckoning. They didn't arrest him on the spot, but their presence and firm words, "Step away immediately or you'll be detained," carried weight. Later, as Derek and Corey sat on a bench, a security official approached with a folded paper. Not a fine, but a formal request to discuss his actions at a local station, a quiet call to accountability. The crowd's silence, thick with tension, spoke louder than any cheer Derek had hoped for, and the looks of disapproval from onlookers pierced deeper than he'd expected. What he dismissed as just content had disrupted a royal detail, mocked a national symbol, and landed him in a situation he couldn't laugh off. For Derek, the prank's fallout wasn't just a bruised ego. It was a legal and moral wake-up call, proving that even in pursuit of fame, some lines demand respect, not ridicule. In the shadow of Buckingham Palace's grand gates, a striking contrast unfolded between Derek Malone's noisy desperation for attention and Corporal Elijah Ward's commanding silence, revealing a profound truth about strength. Derek, the 30-year-old prankster from Miami, arrived armed with an air horn, a rubber chicken, and a fake mustache, determined to shatter the Royal Guard's stoic exterior for his millions of followers. His every move, blasting the horn inches from Elijah's ear, waving a tiny flag under his hat, even clapping dramatically like a circus ringmaster, was a loud plea for reaction, a bid to turn tradition into a punchline. The crowd laughed at first, egging him on, but as Derek's antics escalated, that laughter faded into an uneasy hush. Across from him stood Elijah, a soldier with over a decade of service, his red tunic and rifle steady as stone. He didn't shout back or shove. He didn't need to. When Derek's provocations crossed into physical interference, Elijah's response was a single rifle stomp, a sharp crack that silenced the courtyard, followed by a calm, "Stand back, sir," his voice cutting through the chaos with quiet authority. Later, a subtle step forward sent Derek tumbling, not out of anger, but precision, proving that control could outmatch clowning. The tourists stepped back, phones lowered, as the air grew heavy with awe. Derek's noise begged for eyes, but Elijah's silence demanded respect, a lesson etched in his unreadable gaze and unwavering posture. This wasn't just a guard doing his job. It was a man forged by war and loss, standing for a legacy that dwarfed Derek's fleeting fame. The prankster's taunts, Sergeant Statue, Sergeant Iceface, echoed hollowly against Elijah's stillness, exposing the emptiness of noise without purpose. As security escorted Derek away, the crowd's silence lingered, a collective recognition that true power doesn't scream, it stands firm. Elijah's mute dignity turned a would-be viral moment into a mirror for Derek, reflecting the hollowness of his stunts against the depth of a soldier's resolve. In that clash, silence didn't just win, it taught, proving that sometimes the loudest message is the one never spoken. Derek Malone's encounter with Corporal Elijah Ward at Buckingham Palace didn't end with his stumble on the cobblestones. It sparked a journey of reflection that transformed the brash prankster from Miami into a man grappling with his own values. After his failed stunt, marked by air horns, fake mustaches, and a flag waved too close to Elijah's hat, Derek faced not just the crowd's disapproval but a quiet rebuke from the guard's unshaken dignity. Escorted away by security, he felt the weight of their stares, a far cry from the cheers he'd chased for his 2.7 million followers. That night in his hotel room overlooking Hyde Park, the raw footage looped on his laptop, not for edits but for reckoning. Elijah's calm, focused eyes haunted him, a stark contrast to his own frantic bids for attention. 3 days later, Derek returned to the palace, not with a camera but a plain coat seeking redemption. He approached a security officer, asking to apologize to Elijah off-duty, one-on-one. No stunts, no audience. After an hour's wait, He met the guard in a quiet courtyard, out of uniform but still radiating composure. "I owe you a real apology," Derek said, voice low. "I disrespected you. Your uniform, everything it stands for, because I didn't respect myself." Elijah's response was simple. "I didn't do it for you," he said, explaining his duty was for kids dreaming of honor, not pranksters chasing clout. That hit Derek hard. Back online, he posted the unedited video with a caption that stunned his fans. "I crossed a line I shouldn't have. Silence taught me more than any shout ever could." He apologized publicly to Elijah, the palace staff, and his viewers, acknowledging the strength and restraint he'd mocked. The post went viral, not for chaos, but humility, earning praise over ridicule. For Derek, it wasn't about salvaging his image. It was personal. Elijah's few words and firm handshake had flipped a switch, showing him that real growth isn't loud. It's earned through facing the mirror Elijah held up. From a career built on provocation, Derek found a new path, one where respect, not reactions, defined his worth. The clash between Derek Malone and Corporal Elijah Ward at Buckingham Palace didn't fade into the London fog. It rippled outward, leaving a legacy far beyond one prankster's misstep. What started as Derek's noisy quest for viral fame, blasting an air horn, waving a flag and taunting a royal guard, morphed into a global lesson when Elijah's silent strength stole the spotlight. As Derek stumbled away, escorted by security, the crowd's hushed awe told a different story. The man who stood still had won. Within days, clips of Elijah's composure flooded military pages, etiquette forums, and even leadership seminars online, his rifle-straight posture and unflinching gaze becoming a symbol of discipline in a world obsessed with noise. News headlines shifted from American influencer mocks guard to tales of public outrage and admiration, with Elijah, not Derek, emerging as the narrative's heart. Back in Birmingham, a teacher wrote to Elijah's unit asking to share the story with his students, not for the prank, but for the guard's restraint, a real-life lesson in respect and silence is power. Across the Atlantic, Derek's apology video, raw and unpolished, struck a chord. Comments like, "Finally growth," and "Elijah, you're a legend," poured in, signaling a shift in his 2.7 million followers' expectations. The incident transcended its moment, inspiring discussions on dignity over clout, tradition over trends. Elijah, who'd spoken fewer than 5 words, "Stand back, sir," and a quiet explanation of his duty, became an unwitting teacher, his legacy tied not to fame, but to the kids he stood for, like the boy in Yorkshire dreaming of a red coat. For Derek, the fallout wasn't punishment, but peace. His return to apologize and his reflective posts marked a pivot from chaos to clarity, proving that even a failed stunt could plant seeds of change. The story's reach, classrooms, social media, newsrooms, showed how one guard's resolve could echo louder than any shout, turning a tourist's folly into a timeless tale. Long after the palace gates closed that day, Elijah's quiet victory lived on, a reminder that true impact doesn't need a megaphone. It stands firm, letting the world catch up to its meaning. The encounter between Derek Malone and Elijah Ward offers timeless lessons we seniors can carry into our daily lives. First, it reminds us that true strength lies not in noise or bravado, but in quiet dignity, like Elijah's steady stance amid chaos, a quality we've honed through years of patience and perseverance. At our age, we've learned that shouting rarely solves anything. It's the calm resolve, like a firm word to a wayward grandchild, that commands respect. Second, it teaches accountability. Derek's journey from prankster to penitent mirrors, moments we've all faced, where owning our mistakes, even late in life, brings peace over pride. Finally, it underscores the power of legacy. Elijah stood for something bigger, honor, tradition, much like we do for our families and communities, whether volunteering at the senior center or sharing stories with the young ones. For us, this isn't about viral fame, but living with purpose, knowing our quiet actions ripple outward. So as we sip our morning coffee or tend our gardens, let's embrace silence as strength, accountability as growth, and legacy as our gift. Proof that a life well lived speaks louder than words, even at 50, 60, or beyond.